All right, we are live. Yeah, once again. Okay, thank you all for attending. And those who attended the darshan, thank you very much for attending. It was a great darshan, lots of fun. And basically, I just continue teaching. So that's what I'm doing right now. Those who attended the darshan will, this is kind of like an overflow of things that I didn't get to cover during the darshan. Yeah, and one of the things, many of the things, has to do with ecology. I'm an ecologist, yeah, always have been. And that just means that I am in Earth service, yeah, Earth service. And that ecology, it deals with ancient history, it deals with geophysical reality, yeah, it deals with biological reality, it deals with the animal situation, all animals, insects, butterfly, everything. I mean, it's an intense reality if you really truly want to go that way. There are others that think ecology is, oh, I better be organic and I better make sure that, I put my plastics in my plastic bin and I put my glass in my glass bin and I recycle accordingly. And that's not an ecologist. That's a person who follows ecology. That's a very different scenario. An ecologist is a calling. It's a very deep, integrated way of consciousness. And I believe that every living human being is an ecologist. Yeah, and slowly but surely, you'll find as the world gets better, you're going to see that it gets better through ecology. Yeah, and ecology is an aspect of enlightenment. It's when you see things in the bigger picture, and those things are more truthful than you want to face. And it makes you a hero outside of what is the bargain for becoming a hero. Because it puts you right in the grips of corruption, and have to get in a boat and stop people from doing whaling and all the corrupt things that they do in the ocean. And it's not just that. You go to all the refineries in inland, and you go to all the processes to see where the plastic is going, and you don't just complain about it. You actually have to come up with ways to fix it. And you have to see, if cooperation was to take place, and this science is really a true science, then it has to be truly an eclectic pattern of sciences, a group of all sciences working together under this one umbrella, which is ecology, Earth service. Yeah, and so it's happening. Things like that are going on. Yeah, and that's really one of the better things to witness, to know behind the scene this is going on. And it's not just about people, not taking their plastic bags and taking bags to, places where you're going to buy something and not walking away with a plastic bag, but actually carry your bag with you, And all of those things are great human characteristics, things that we do when we go down the aisle, when we make choices of what we buy. It's a big thing. It's a big thing, and you're going to find that it's going to tap your consciousness to the max. Because now you got to read, and then you have to read more, and then you have to read more. It's just like, what? Am I an investigator 24/7? It's not because you're paranoid. It's because you're working within the field of ecology. And so it's not that there's a corruption going on in a way to destroy us knowingly. It's ignorance. So we're on the other side of ignorance. Enlightenment. And where enlightenment sits, it is Earth service. And there are sciences that come from that. And those sciences are what come from the higher mind of Christ, or Buddha, or the masters. It's those sciences. And they get worked out. And magical things on Earth happen. Accidental things happen to make these things come about, to come into fruition. Yeah. Here we want to take care of all the plastic on Earth. How are we going to do that? There's a heck of a lot of plastic, and between California coastline, San Francisco, and Hawaii is an island of plastic. And it's so much, it's ridiculous. And because of the stream of the ocean, in current, it has a tendency to flow in that particular position, between these main current positions, Hawaiian Islands, which you think are just 7 islands sitting there, but they're not. There are about 120 islands, and they're under the ocean. And they're thousands of miles long. They're amazing. What is really about those Hawaiian Islands. You only see the top of them. But it's like the Himalayas, and it's under the ocean. But just because there's an ocean there doesn't mean that doesn't exist. That mountain range, that power center, the effect that creates a change for current. And it creates a change for current that allows certain animals, to live wisely and travel wisely. All the major whales go to Hawaii, go to Maui, to give birth, and to get pregnant, and then they travel the earth. They go to Alaska, they go along the coast of Washington, but it's within that circle, that cycle, where that flow is moving, where this trash ends up, and it ends up in them. It ends up in the same fish that are on the same cycle, traveling in the same ocean. And if they're tuna and they're really big, they got toxins in them like you can't imagine. So eating big fish is a bad idea. Bad idea. Because it's just going to be a toxic waste to you. But the worst part of it is that these fish have to live in an ocean of plastic, and they have sometimes hundreds of years of rope and entangled net that was released from a boat, and it gets just stuck out there, and it's floating along, and it gets more shit, and it's over 100 years old, and it entangles with the cups and all the Band-Aids and Coke bottles and everything that we put into it. So you see that in the turtle when the rope is wrapped around its neck and the bottle is coming out of its mouth. These are ecological principles. These are things you kind of see in your mind's eye before you see them. You see the effect of this and this and this, and oh my God, it could do this, and it really hits your heart, and because it's intuitive and it's true. And once you dive into it and seek out this reality, you find out it's real. So we think. For a while, we thought that the biggest place where this kind of plastic would end up would be in that Pacific location, in this big island area, in the middle between Hawaii and San Francisco, But the reality is, time goes on, reality sets in, and where the real trash is at is on the coastline. Everywhere on the coastline. It's so much, it's ridiculous. That 50% of the trash on that island setting in the Pacific is being picked up now by recycling processes, by ecologists, and they have a ship and they collect it and they get 50% of it, pretty much every year or so. But there still is all this crap on the coastline. So they're coming up with other devices that are going along the coastlines. And it's kind of like a lawnmower, and as you go, or if you were doing a field of vegetables, as you're going along, in front of it is a cutting machine, or pulls it up, and then it goes onto a tray that is moving up on a belt into a great big basket that holds all the trash that was in that ocean along the ocean side, and it's out like. This is slow-moving stuff, and it's within the first mile near the coastline, and it's just piled up, And so that is getting cleaned up. That part's getting cleaned up, and the ocean's getting cleaned up, and all that. But on top of that, in the mindset the mindset says we can't have oil anymore, we can't have coal anymore, and there's a lot of other things like the animals. What about the land? You know, how much land should we be giving over to raising animals? How much land should we be giving over for cities and things like that, rather than people spreading out and having transportation and ability to get long distances in short period of time? Yeah, and if you can go long distances in short period of time, you'll live further away. Yeah, and maybe work in the city if you have to. Yeah, if that's your business and that's what you're serving at. Yeah, but you could still go home and live in a wonderful environment in the mountains. You know, just 20 minutes away, 15 minutes away, as we get closer and closer to the future of new transportation. Yeah, so all of that changes a lot of our ability to make changes where before it'd be harder. Yeah, we can have tiny homes. We don't have to have luxurious homes, because if we live on the land, we feel like being outside more, being inside less. And we enjoy gardening. We enjoy dealing with our animals. You know, we enjoy picking up eggs every day. We enjoy milking the cow. We really enjoy that. So our time home begins to be more and more time wanting to be home than thinking you need to start up a business and become a billionaire and work in the city. You know, so it's a transition for all of us. Yeah, for right now, we're unrequited love, and we have no idea what we need to do with our desire body. Now, we desire to be rich. Why? Because we think it's going to make us happy. We think that it's going to get us the nice house and all these things. Yeah, but in our transition, we're going to find out we need less, and we're happier, a lot happier. Yeah, and we have all these things, and based on ecology. Yeah, based on ecological principles that move social ideals and sciences, that becomes an outcome for us to have enlightenment. You know, live in a world of enlightenment. Yeah. So simultaneously, we have a healing crisis go on, because part of that enlightenment has to do with your government. You know, whether or not you ever get enlightened may be based on the fact that your government is full of ignorance. And it's based on full of ignorance, people you hire and stuff like Trump and other people who don't believe in ecology and don't believe in any science that's involved in ecology, like using, a small amount of electricity to create lights, and having wind generators and solar and all of that, would be absolutely something that we should be moving toward. But in ignorance, there's nothing in their brain that gives them this ability to understand that, because they have no light that creates the enlightenment that makes them different than an inert person who's very dense, and that process of their denseness leaves them, in ignorance. So all they can think is what they know, what they have learned. Now, my grandfather knew richness, and my mother told me every day I needed to get a really good job, and I needed to go get my career together and make the family proud. And it wasn't about me. It's not about us. It's about our government, or it's about our social system. So that drives us. It gives us purpose and all this direction and everything. But what if it's misdirection? What if it's under the influence of, just the fact that, it can keep our minimum wage down, at around $3 to $5 when I was a teenager and stuff. That was minimum wage. $1.75 was minimum wage when I first started working. That's crazy. But housing was only $250 a month, and it was a nice place. So there was almost an equal balance at that time. You could sense the relationship of the amount of money you're getting, even if it's a low-paid job. You get almost enough to rent an apartment and eat and pay bills. Almost. Not quite, but it's almost there. And that sense of our reality is getting denser and denser and denser, harder and harder and harder to move forward. Yeah, because most of it has to do with enlightenment. It has to do with whether or not we're at a time where we are getting a tax write-off, or we're getting a employee increase, or we're getting lower whatever and higher whatever, which makes that balance that I just talked about, or being able to get paid a certain amount of money and having your living wage be close to the same as the cost of living. Yeah, close. Yeah, there was a time where that was like that. Back in the 60s and the 50s. Yeah, you can drop that all beginning in the 70s. It went crazy. Because we never had this before. In the 50s, everybody came back from the military, and housing was built in suburban style. So we can buy for $14,000. We can buy a 2-bedroom house, on a lot, nice lot with tree and a garden and everything you kind of need, and all the houses were the same, and it was inexpensive because of that. Yeah. So it only was like $300, $200 a month for those houses. Yeah. And our job was high because we were given the opportunity to buy housing at only $0 down and $2 as a down payment if you were a VA. Yeah, I did that. I bought my first house that way because I'm a VA. Yeah, so those are balanced scenarios. Those are levels of consciousness that feed into society. Yeah, but we started losing it as of the 70s. Yeah, people started playing the game. Yeah, and they manipulated what it was that was simple and right and balanced, which was low-cost housing and the opportunity to get into that house because it was low-cost housing. And it was near equal to the lower middle class wages. That you can equally qualify, masses of people qualified, masses of people. But the problem is that within 1955 to 1970, those same houses started selling for 5 times what they sold for. Yeah. And banks were lying to people. They're saying, "Oh, your house is going to be worth more. You can get a second mortgage in less than 3 years. Your house is going to be worth $500,000. You paid $150,000 for it." And you go, "Yeah." And in 5 years, it actually does go up that high, because the bank wants you to sell that house. Because once it gets that high, who's going to hold on to it? It's a dream. That's the delusionary dream we got bought into from the 50s to the 70s, and it started getting payouts. The dream started paying off, and everybody just got all wild about it. Oh, buy another house, just keep this up. Yeah. And then by the 1980s, 1990, all of our mortgages were due. We were overpaid. Everything was collapsing. Even the banks collapsed. Yeah, everything collapsed, because we were not doing this in any enlightened way. Ecological is economy. Yeah, part of the ecological process, being an ecologist, is being an economist. Yeah, so you have to have enough enlightenment to know this shit's going on. So the moment you get in, you get out, because it's going to get worse as time goes on. The house you buy is going to mean that you need to have a higher income bracket to buy that next house. Even though you sold your house for so much money, you still have to show a higher income bracket to move into that next higher bracket house, unless you're going to pay cash. Yeah, because the bank needs to see that you have the income to do that. Now, in 1950 and 60, when you bought that $150,000 house and your income was at that level, it was normal. But you got to multiply your income by 3 to 4 times after you sold that house, and you want to move on into this world. So credit cards came out. Yeah. Everybody got credit cards. They gave them away like they were plastic. Yeah. They gave them to every person in college. The moment you come out of high school and you enter college, the banks call you and say, hey, we'll give you a credit card. We'll give you $5,000. Just go out, spend it. Don't worry about it. You can, if you have a whole $5,000 spent, you only have to pay $150 a month. Don't worry about that. But it takes you 45 years to pay it off. 45 years. And the same people are saying, hey, go to college. Go to this college. It's only $28,000. But this other one over here, which is prestigious, is $120,000. Now, we can get you a loan that'll last you your 4-year term of $120,000. All you got to do is sign here. No down payment, no payments for 4 years until after you graduated. Because guess what? You're going to make a fortune. You are. You're going to be running this bank. You're going to be rich. You're going to be an engineer. You're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or some kind of thing that makes money. But come to find out, you don't. And you're driving a taxi. Yeah. Because there is no businesses that want highly educated people in an unenlightened society. Not until the late 90s. And all the technologies, and in comes Elon Musk, and in comes other manufacturers and engineers that create enough foundation for us to be raised up. But the numbers of people now, there's hardly enough people to employ into these areas. So it requires us to go a different direction in our education. Yeah. But still, that whole, in the 70s to now, people are freaked out about homes, freaked out about how much it costs to live, freaked out about can't even get $15 an hour raise. I mean, good God Almighty. Yeah. I mean, look at a person who works in a restaurant. You can't imagine a harder job. Being a waiter or a waitress, it's pins and needles. They treat you like shit, because you're a servant, and a servant is the lowest level of a human nature. So it draws that out of a person when you come over and you say, can I take your order? I don't know. Give me a minute. What? Calm down. Can't you just have a little conversation? How are you tonight? Yeah, I hope you're not too stressed. Are you having a good night? And nothing like that. No. It's always this servant subservient. And just by nature it happens. So it's like the worst freaking job to be in. Yeah. And then, you actually need to get paid for so much work because you're focusing your brain, you're writing things down, you're communicating and negotiating between other servers, between the bar, between the restaurant staff, and getting your stuff out on time, or you're not going to get a tip, and the people are just going to get more angry as you come along, all on you. And who is this person? That's the person who gets paid less money than anybody in that building. They're by agreement. They agree, I will take $2.50 an hour. And that's it. I'll take that. $2.50 if you let me come in here and serve people, and then they'll give me this money. Yeah. That's a horrifying scenario. That's so off in the area of servancy, being of service. Because here we are. We're always of service. Yeah. But if we just look at one area of people who go into this area of service and how they're treated all around the world, in many cases, they get no tips. It's just a low-paying wage, period. And it's so low, so bad, so bad, that you travel almost to any other country and there's no tipping. They won't allow it. And they just accept that this is how it's going to be. There's no other higher income. Nothing else comes of it. I don't get anything out of the food that I'm selling. Yeah, because in reality, if you go into these restaurants, you find out that they're a store and not a restaurant. They're a store. I've been a manager and an owner of restaurants. Yeah, and I was shocked when I found out this has nothing to do with food. This has to do with sales. How can you upsell? Yeah, get those fries in there, get that drink in there. You know, make sure they get dessert. Yeah. Tell them about that special. Yeah, we bought a whole bunch of that meat and we want to sell it because we've got it cheap, you know, and we have barbecue night, you know, and all this kind of stuff. It's a sale to negotiate people to make more and more. But that does not go into the person who's doing the sale. You know, if they would just be honest and say, this is profit sharing, all of us, the dishwasher, the person in the kitchen, the manager standing there running everything, and the people. Because if you don't, the manager feels like you should take some of that money. And if you don't, the people behind in the kitchen feel like they should take some of that money. And that the people who are making money, who are now the servants, are unjustly getting money that they shouldn't get. So they, many times, they'll pull it together, divide it out, and those things that are in that way are shared, not the profit. If it was the profit, then the people who were being served wouldn't be pushed to pay another $35 for the meal. Yeah? It shouldn't be like that if it was profit sharing. But there's a fat cat sitting at the ownership of this thing who does not give a shit, because this is a store and not a service-oriented restaurant. It's a store. And he's the owner of the store for the means of making an enormous amount of profit from retail out of wholesale. Yeah, and the lowest that he pays for it, the more money he makes. Yeah, and it's all about his making money or her making money, and not about sharing that money. Yeah, that is not put into the ecology of it. Yeah, because everything has a psychological, has an emotional, has a physical outcome to it. And all of our society is based on this. Yeah, it doesn't matter where we're at, doesn't matter what we're doing. If it's not profit sharing to some degree, yeah, it's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. We're stuck in a whole other realm, as though we are servants. Yeah, and you buy us for our wage, in an hourly wage, you know, as people who just carry out, work. Yeah. And there's nothing in the outcome of that work is what needs to be shared. It's the outcome. Yeah. So there's a lot in change that we're going to go through. And one of the bigger things in ecology is the process of change around animals. Yeah. Here we have a lot of people have pets, and a lot of people feel an absolute need to have pets, and it's a big thing. Let me just show you a little something here. And the old pet industry, which is very much the store scenario. It's the same thing, restaurant or whatever. If you look at this, with land, water, and fossil fuel, the environmental impact of animal production used to feed dogs and cats alone is 25 to 30% that is used to feed all humans. I think that's really shocking. Yeah, really shocking. It's out of touch with reality. Yeah. I mean, reality is that we have a lot of people who are starving to death. And a lot of people where there's a lot of misunderstanding as to how we should live, controlling housing, controlling jobs, keeping buildings up and going when they're rat infested and bug infested. Yeah. When you know it, it has to be shut down. But for some reason, we live in a world People negotiate to keep these things going. And just do whatever you can do to live through it. But I could show you in New York, there are whole buildings connected to buildings, connected to buildings, connected to buildings. And they're not only infested by the biggest rats you'll ever see, but on the street is all the garbage from those buildings that doesn't get picked up. Just on occasion, not on normal routine, not to prevent disease, yeah, and enormous amount of psychological, emotional, and mental, processes that come from it. Living in a house where, you can you can hear the bugs running around. Yeah, you can hear them in the walls. Yeah, the bed bugs are bad enough, but you have roaches and bed bugs, and all of them have bed bugs. Yeah, yeah, bed bugs is a real big thing. Yeah, all of that is because we don't have consciousness. Consciousness, it requires consciousness, and consciousness is not based on money. Consciousness is based on what is needed to be done, and that's done. Yeah, not oh, we can't afford to do that, or maybe we could do that at another time. But when you find a building that's rat infested and has been for a long time, and you find all the insects and everything in it, building's got to go. Yeah, that's a big transition from where we're at. In actually taking things and wiping things out and getting rid of it. Yeah, not just recycling it, cleaning it, and letting other poor people into it. And let it continue sitting there. Yeah, that's the situation that we're in. But look at this. $7 billion human beings on the planet. Increasing attention has been paid to the environmental effect people's diet, with some predicting 100 to 110% increase in demand over agriculture production by the year 2050. This could require 1 billion hectares to be cleared globally for agriculture. Yeah. And 35% of that is for your dog and cat. 35% of that is for your dog and cat. Yeah. That's fact. That's not just, these are all just statistics that are relative to, and if you put it all together, it has a pretty interesting process. So what do these animals eat? Yeah. They eat corn and soy. Yeah. Whether you're a chicken, whether you're, a dog, it's mixed into your food. Cat, it's mixed into your food. If they eat the animal byproducts, then these things, corn and soy, is fed to those animals in order to feed those animals. Yeah. So it's much cheaper than other options. Yeah, it's 47% of soy and 60% of corn is used for livestock consumption. Yeah. And what does that do? In order to successfully mass-produce nutrient-hungry corn for livestock, more nitrogen, fertilizer, and pesticides are required than any other crops. You can believe that every year, over 6 million tons of nitrogen is used on corn through chemical fertilizers and manure. Corn also reduces soil fertility and rendering the land it is grown on unsuitable for any other plant species. Yeehaw! Soybeans are being produced on a fragile system of land susceptible to soil erosion. Soy production causes soil compaction and exhausting the soil of its nutrients and value to the ecosystem. That's two plants, yeah, that are destroying the land that they grow on. And you can't continue growing corn and soy on the same land, because the nutrients are gone after a short period of time. So you have to add all these compounds of fertilizers and other things just to keep your farm in production. Yeah. Now, my thing is by choosing to eat paleo diet, 1 meal a day, and intermittent fasting, and have only one pet, if any at all, you can drastically cut your carbon footprint, save precious water supplies, help ensure that vital crop resources are fed to people rather than pets and livestock. With the wealth of available paleo options available on a 1 a day meal and intermittent fasting, it has never been easier to eat with a planet in mind. Yeah. So it's all enlightenment. The information has to come from enlightenment, and you're not going to get this stuff. You'll get an absolute opposite, like it's a war. That enlightenment is dangerous. It's like the Pope, taking Galileo and throwing him in prison because enlightenment is dangerous. What an asshole. The Pope was a heretic. The whole thing is set in, not in a conspiracy, but in a process of ignorance. And ignorance comes from a place. Comes from a left spin. It comes from, energy, negative energy, wars, and, processes of pesticides put into our food, and our brain slowly but surely getting Alzheimer, like crazy, and cancers, and all kinds of things that are wiping us out, and our bodies not healthy, because we're eating fast food and we're eating carbohydrates that are processed, and we're taking pesticides, and we have a dog or two, and we have all the bugs and insects we cannot possibly imagine to breathe and breed in our house, because we have animals in there. And we have to buy vacuums to clean up all that air. Air purifiers to take that air and purify it with all that flaky little hair flying around. Because the kids are just getting sick. And your sinuses are going bad. Because you're not meant to be inside a house with an animal. We're made with not much hair. And we have a tendency to want to cut it. Because it attracts insects. It's enlightenment, folks. It's part of our process is to move through this and come out the other end. When we come out the other end, it'll be because we've actually wiped away, and these things have to stop. They have to go away. And there are forces that create ignorance. So Trump would be a force. Trump is a force that creates ignorance. So let's take a look at Trump, the force.
Within the past week or so, he has started doing that again, in just as bombastic terms as he used after the election and on January 6th. Here's Kyle and Josh's reporting tonight at Politico.com. Quote, the fanatical Donald Trump supporters who stormed the Capitol in January are facing an unexpected obstacle to their freedom: Trump himself. Trump's refusal to accept the reality that he lost the 2020 election, reflected in a torrent of recent statements renewing discredited claims about a rigged vote, has become a feature of prosecutors' latest attempts to jail Capitol riot defendants that they deem too dangerous to release pending trial. Judges have started citing this argument in cases where they've decided to detain defendants for presenting a threat of future violence. They've agreed that Trump's rhetoric could spur his most radicalized supporters to attack again. And that could be bad news for dozens of additional riot suspects being hauled in on alleged conspiracy and police assault charges. Judge Emmett Sullivan wrote in a recent opinion ordering the detention of one January 6 defendant, quote, former President Donald Trump continues to make forceful public comments about the, quote, stolen election, chastising individuals who did not reject the supposedly illegitimate results that put the current administration in place. The judge continues, quote, such comments reflect the continued threat posed by individuals like this defendant, who has demonstrated he is willing and able to engage in extreme and terrifying levels of violence against law enforcement with a chilling disregard for the rule of law, seemingly based on mistaken beliefs about the illegitimacy of the current administration. Prosecutors have also begun citing and echoing Judge Sullivan's rationale in 5 written statements from Friday to Tuesday, meaning from this past Friday till today. Former President Trump has sought to reignite his frenzied claims that the 2020 election was stolen from him, assailing state officials who refused to entertain those claims, and praising others seeking to relitigate the results. Trump has said, quote, "Why are the Democrats so desperate to stop this election fraud from being revealed?" That answer is obvious. That was in a statement Trump made on Friday, demanding that Arizona's governor provide security for a Republican audit of the 2020 election results in that state. January 6 defendants have argued that the circumstances of January 6th are unlikely to happen again. But Judge Sullivan and now other judges and prosecutors, citing some of Trump's recent rhetoric, have pushed back on that reasoning. It's not over if they say it's not over, right? Not in terms of what they're likely to do to try to effectuate the craziness that they've been fantasizing about.
Yep. Yeah. And this is cult reality. Cult reality. Yeah. So cult reality is part of a process. Yeah. Imagine that in a religious sense, you know, the religious reality is a cult, you know, in its own sense, because it separates and does all this stuff, and you know, you have to join it, you know, and believe in that process. Yeah. So there's a lot of energy that moves people into cult-like processes. We have Scientology, we have you're born a Jew, you know, so automatically you're covered by your own social system that you have to be Jewish, or you're Muslim, you have to do the same thing, you know. And if you're a Catholic and your mom's Catholic, your dad's a Catholic, it's hard not to be a Catholic, you know. So all these things are a cult that you're recruited into and sometimes believed that you're born into. You're born into it. Now, that's a caste system that goes back tens of thousands of years, and it's what we have today. It's a shell of it. Yeah, you can't really see it. You can't tell it is a caste system, because the caste system used to be so big in your culture. You would separate people and identify them in you know, horrendous behavior that they have to carry out because they're in this caste system. You know, certain people have to be the people who cut up meat and kill animals and provide those particular things because they're at the lowest level of the caste system. So if you're born in that level, you have to carry out those activities, because within that caste system, you're not allowed to get a job or be trained or go to school outside your caste. Because someone's got to do this, right? So they set this caste system up to fulfill the needs of an illusion, God in the machine, rather than people making their own choices. You know, I think I would like to be a butcher. You know, well, fine. You know, it doesn't matter. You know, if your father's a rich person, or your father's a priest, or your father's a bookkeeper, or makes shoes. You know, if you choose to be a butcher, then go be a butcher. You know, but in a caste system, you can't do that. But in a real world of enlightenment, you can. Yeah, you can make these choices. Yeah. So when we get into a caste system because we have these religious dogmas that are going on, but something's going on inside that religious dogma, and almost in every case, it has to do with Satan. Yeah, because they're all talking about God or Satan, God or Satan. You know, well, you just wonder, you know, what side are they on? They know about this stuff. What side are they on? You know, and it's not a conspiracy. It's just that it's so difficult for people to seek the right path and go on the right path. So if we just look at the Catholic Church, take a look at this. Now we know that at Christmas time and Easter time especially, they have a Luciferian ceremony that goes on, claiming Lucifer is God the Father, and that the son of Lucifer, they call to be Jesus, is the Antichrist. Yeah, and that in their belief system, that's the outcome. That little Jesus is the son of Satan, Lucifer, and they invoke this every Easter. Easter of all things, it's pretty bad because that's the time when Jesus sacrificed his life and God sacrificed his son. So it's pretty vile when it comes down to the actions behind Satan and the fulfillment of carrying out such an act, and then the ceremony involved in it under the name of Jesus Christ. Their whole Luciferian process claims that they're Christians, but they're not. So what else are they doing that is involved in that?
The Vatican guards their secrets closely, no matter the public pressure or what these secrets could mean for the world. Of course, this begs the question, what other secrets might they be hiding? In 1750, archaeologists discovered a mysterious book deep within the tomb of Solomon in Jerusalem. It was inscribed with the year 1522, though those who examined it believed it was a copy of an older source, perhaps from the 1200s, perhaps even from an oral source much older than that. But what truly shocked those who saw it was not the book's date, but its contents. Written on the pages within were instructions on how to make magic talismans and amulets, how to cast magic spells and summon demons. Most dramatically, the book described how to summon the devil by constructing a magic circle and performing a ritual involving the sacrifice of a baby lamb, at which point one could make a deal with the devil. Intriguingly, the author of the book was allegedly one Honorius of Thebes, an apocryphal figure who was said to have been possessed by the devil. The mysterious book was called the Grand Grimoire. In the 18th century, grimoires, a word for a textbook of the occult, gained a popularity in France. Accordingly, copies of the Grand Grimoire, said to be the most powerful of all grimoires, began to spread across the country and across the world to French colonies. There the Grand Grimoire was called Le Dragon Rouge, the Red Dragon, calling to mind the biblical words of Revelation chapter 12. And behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. Yet despite the alleged power of the Grand Grimoire and the many copies spread across the world, none reported having summoned the devil, and the book's popularity faded into memory. Perhaps then the conclusion is that the Grand Grimoire was nothing but a hoax. Some offer a different explanation. They say the Grand Grimoire is not a hoax, but rather the commercialized copies spread around the world represent an edited version of the work, its true power censored out, and that somewhere the original, unaltered copy remains. Except it's not somewhere. We know where the original copy of the Grand Grimoire is. That's right. According to the Vatican, it is stored in their secret archives. Could the Vatican really have access to a book of magic spells or even the ability to conjure the devil? And if so, what other powers might they have? In 1972, a bizarre headline appeared in an Italian magazine called La Domenica del Corriere. It read, "A machine that photographs the past has finally been invented." The article gave the account of a Catholic priest by the name of Father Pellegrino Ernetti, who asserted that hidden deep within the Vatican secret archives was a device which allowed its user to see and hear events from the past. Not a time machine which sent a person back in time, but rather a sort of time viewer which brought the past into the present. A device which could tune into specific events of the past and display them on a screen, like some sort of time-traveling television. The device was called the chronovisor, and with it, Ernetti asserted, he had been able to see the last days of the life of Jesus and other biblical moments, like the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah and the creation of the 10 Commandments. Most astonishingly, the article included a photograph of the face of Jesus at the moment of crucifixion, which Ernetti had purportedly taken using the device. Proof, it seemed, of the chronovisor's existence and function. We made a video on this topic, and you can click the link in the top right corner or in the comments to watch it. For a while, the article caused a stir in the religious and scientific communities before fading from memory, never confirmed but equally never disproven. Then, curiously, in 1988, the Vatican itself issued an official decree on the chronovisor, in which it warned that anyone using an instrument of such characteristics would be excommunicated.
That's your lovely Vatican. Yeah. And we know that they carry out ceremonies of Lucifer, and we know that Lucifer is their god, and that we know that the Pope is supposedly the incarnation of Lucifer, known as the Father. Yeah. So every Pope becomes overshadowed, becomes embodied by Lucifer. Yeah. And then they call him the Father. So he's anointed through the ceremonies of Lucifer, and they're the church that brings forth the Antichrist, the child of Lucifer, yeah, which they call the Christ, but in truth it's the Antichrist, yeah. And so it's quite a process. We know this is true. We know they do it every year. It can be verified, and we also know that they have the one book on earth that can invoke the devil. Yeah. And so what? Are they actually doing this? Are they really doing this? And how does that have an effect on us? Yeah. And are they doing more? More. Are they going outside of Earth, to find Lucifer, to find the devil, and call the devil here and anoint him? Could they do something would they have an intention like that? Let's check it out.
Arizona, the Vatican works with world governments and American astronaut Gordon Cooper, one of the original 7 people sent to space by the United States, asserted. You want to know about UFOs and little green men? Contact the Vatican. In fact, even the current Pope, Pope Francis, has publicly declared that he would be willing to baptize aliens, asking rhetorically, who are we to close doors? Far from closing doors, the Vatican freely seeks to open them. In Tucson, Arizona, the Vatican works with world governments and astrological associations to scour deep space for signs of extraterrestrial life using some of the most powerful telescopes on Earth at the Mount Graham International Observatory. Curiously, the instrument which powers the most formidable of the observatory's telescopes is known as the Large Binocular Telescope Near-Infrared Utility with Camera and Integral Field Unit for Extragalactic Research, or Lucifer for short. Yes, the Vatican is searching for aliens using a telescope named after the devil. So what does the Vatican know about aliens that we don't? About the devil, about the past and the future. Whatever it...
So, when you're playing with shit like that, what effect can it have on you who's trying to decide whether or not you eat a candy bar today? Yeah? You need to really get what I'm talking about. Because this thing called the astral plane is formidable. It really keeps you from seeing me. Yeah, seeing me. My parents couldn't even see me after masters stood in the living room saying, you have in front of you a child who is the incarnation of Christ and many other auspicious avatar qualities that aren't even known by most people, but these masters knew it, and they wanted to make sure my parents were aware of it. But they were so blinded by everything. It was literally impossible. Yeah? So there's there's an enormous amount of energy. Yeah? So imagine you have a cult. You have a cult. And its outcome, purpose, is through the occult. Through the occult. Those Dark Lodge beings stand within that place, and they own all the books of Satan and God. The occult. And they create an energy inside of people to be recruited into the cult. And as that draws into its manifestation, it turns out to be a culture left over from the cult. And all the people in Egypt are crazy and have their mind set in a specific way because there was an enormous cult there. And it's still there because people reincarnate and they can't get their head around how they made a bargain with the devil. And their culture is the outcome of that bargain. Their culture. That includes America, every nation, every city, every town, every business, every family, every door you enter, is based on this shit. It's a big, a many multifaceted cult. Yeah. And you can go into your university, you can go into your hospital, and they're ignorant. The doctors aren't as bright as they say they are. Yeah. And they're at a whim. They still don't treat the virus correctly. They still do inhalation. They still put pressure on the lungs. Nothing has changed since the beginning. We found out in the beginning that's not how you treat it. But to actually put oxygen through the arterial process and bring oxygen through the body without it coming through the lungs, which is the only way it can be done in this case, that's a far bigger thing than trying to do breathing machines. Blood gases and all of that has to go on. It's very, very intense, and not a lot of places have it. And no one wants to say in the middle of a pandemic when everything is very expensive and which direction we're going to take the cheap freaking road. And that's what happened. And still no one talks about it. And people are dying everywhere because the treatment is wrong. So they get it, they die. And we're hoping that the vaccines will work out. The vaccines have to do with a big problem. These things mutate, and we get multiple viruses that can't be treated exactly the same way. And the reaction to the vaccine will be different if the person has had the virus and you didn't know it. So there's so many factors we're not anywhere near understanding. And the reason for that is because you got crackerjack bullshit artists in the Jewish community creating black magic and ceremonial magic against people. You got Scientology doing the same thing. You got people in Hollywood who believe that the black magic that's found in the Jewish religion, the Kabbalah, is a useful source in order to gain power, to get their life completely situated and maintain universal balance. Just like Oprah would say, we control the universe. Come on. It's a cult. It's a cult. We do not control the universe. We destroy it. And we stand back and stand in awe of it, but we don't see the creation of it. We don't understand the creator, because there is shit going on in all these religions, even the little ones. There's people going, give me money, you'll get money. Let me touch you and I'll heal you and you give me money. And it's just, bullshit, cult bullshit. When you get in a cult, you're willing to say things because you think those things will save people because they gain faith. Even if you're lying, they rationalize it and say, well, it made them believe in Jesus, so therefore they're better people. But it doesn't mean that that person believes in Jesus at all. They're just using it as a sales tool. Yeah? No one understands Jesus. No one understands God. Yeah? You're not going to get it out of one freaking Bible. Because these people, like this place, look at this. That's huge. That's huge. That's doctrines after doctrines over history, over thousands of years of who knows what is in that library. That's a tree of knowledge, people. And they even have a machine that allows them to see through the tree of knowledge of such a psychic envelope. It allows us to look back in the past. I mean, come on. What if you could look back in the past and you put spells on it and makes that past more worse than what it really was? A place like this would do that. Yeah. They would do that because they think they should. Look at all the stuff they did. How many people died? How many people were boiled in oil? Yeah. How many people were hung? How many people were deballed? Yeah. How many people had their guts cut out, hanging at their feet? Yeah. Common stuff if you look in the history of the Catholic Church. Yeah. What group gave in to Hitler? What group hid the Nazis? Yeah. And the guy who was the Pope at the time, he was a communist. He was a Hitler fanatic. He was into Mussolini. That was his leader, his closest friend. Mussolini made it possible for this place to exist. He sanctioned it. He said this land is what it is today. He made that law. He decreed the bank. He decreed everything. He created a country for Satan. And that was Trump. So think about this. Trump. You just look at that guy, he's like a fucking cartoon. He's hilarious, but he is majorly intentional. He does not get off that high horse. He will not leave that throne seat. If there is a Satan on earth who is on a throne seat and believes he is the Lord of all and all should pray to him, that's the guy. Yeah. And he's going nuts over the fact that the election was millions of votes apart, even though he thinks he won by a landslide. Because he simply cannot accept he's not on the throne seat. He can't accept it. Yeah. So imagine today, he's got Arizona going on. Yeah. And he's got people thinking, oh, we've got to make sure that my vote is counted. Reality comes forth. Yeah. And there are 50 states in the whole United States, and he chooses one state, to do this. And that's mainly because it is one of the states that he lost in, and it was on a close margin. Yeah, because remember, Arizona was really close. Yeah, it was a real. If that passes, he wins. That was the thing at the time. Yeah, so that's in his head. It's in his head, indelible. He's a cult. He's a culture. Yeah, and if you think of a culture, it's something that is spawned. It doesn't have a life. It doesn't have a soul. It's not even Faustian. It's spawned. It is from the devil. Spawned. Yeah? You gotta look this shit up, because you people would learn a lot when you kind of find out the occult reality of what their desire is. Just like, a long time ago, they wished to create Dianetics, create the incarnation of Diane. And if you study the ancient Greek process of who Diane is, she's the goddess of war. She's the evilest of all demigods, the destroyer of God. And that's the same as the Amazon. That one lady we have as a hero, what is it, who is she, Amazon or Wonder Woman, yeah. But she's really an Amazon. She's from the tribe of the Amazon. And they believe that they're goddesses. And she always shows all this power. But if you study it, who those people are girls who's looking for God, and they want to kill him. Because they don't believe God's God. They believe their God. The only existing God on earth, which is female. And they come in a race of them. They're tall, they're warriors, they're Diane. So right now we have this storytelling process as though that's somebody we should think is historical and good for us and shit like that, and it is not. It's just being played on us, astrally played on us, and people just go, wow, what an amazing thing. So imagine this is going on in a place called Arizona. Go to Arizona. Go there. I went there. And I'd stay there for about 2-3 weeks. And the first thing I noticed is that most of the businesses say that they're in covenant with the devil. The devil's dominion. The football team is called the Devils. Stadium is called the Devil's Stadium. All the t-shirts you see have the devil on them. It's a little surprise. You probably all don't go there very often. You don't know why. But it's the devil place. Why would anybody choose to call their football players the Devils, or their stadium the Devils, and all their businesses, their bars and the Devil's Dominion, a bar, Devil's Dominion? Can you imagine it? The biggest bar in Phoenix? It's crazy. Certainly didn't make it a hospitable place for me to be. Every single day, all I saw was that. And it was rampant. And at the same time, if you look at Arizona and Tucson, this is where Lucifer's telescope is at for the Catholic Church, where they're looking for Lucifer from outer space. And that focus comes out of a place that invokes the devil in all their games. You imagine how sixth ray games are. I mean, they're now saying, don't call us the Indians. We got rights. But no one mentions the devil. And I bet it's not the only place that has the devil, but it's the biggest place that has the devil. And they also have this interesting thing, and they also have Trump carrying out an election ballot process to where he's counting it, and it's all being done in a way in which no one could know whether or not they're actually changing the ballots, so that if they count it again, it'll go in favor of whatever way they say, because they've altered the ballots. And there's no way of knowing that they've altered the ballots. I mean, what's the chance they altered the ballots, people? Pretty high. And if there are any inconsistencies from the last two times this state had the ballots counted, and they came out the same. If there is anything like 1,000 or so, you think it's going to turn around and all of a sudden people are going to go, oh yeah, boy, I bet you that's true. It won't. It will become such a degree of how did we get into this shit? How can we allow a third party come in, and it's a media operation by One America, who is a lying media corporation that lies all the time, lies, when they're the only one that 100% are behind Trump. So they're paying for this. They organized it. They do the whole thing. It is a media channel that's pulling this off. And the one thing you don't want in charge of something like this is media. Yeah, because media's work can all go wrong. You know, there could be intentions, and media has a fall, you know, a negative process of being media in the first place, because they can put something out that is specifically focused and is a lie. Like they said the other day, you know, that all Biden wants is for everybody to eat only 1 pound of meat a month. Yeah. And 1 burger a week at most. Yeah. And you get 1 pound of meat at most a month. You know. And that's nothing Biden's saying, but it's what all these people in the media are saying. People, Democrat or Republicans or whatever, are pushing this as though that's a reality. You know. And there is no reality like that. And then there's a whole bunch of other lies, because there's nothing they can complain about. The man is at the highest rating of anybody. Yeah, he had gotten an enormous amount of money offered into society and to build up society. You know, so no one can complain. You know, and they have to make up shit. And it wasn't just one, it was like 2 or 3, and then went on to 4, and finally they just stopped. Yeah. But that's the process of a cult. You really think people are so stupid that they believe something because they don't look at other media? They are a cult. They're obligated to one channel. And One American News is going to tell you the guy wants you to only eat 1 burger. And Christmas is gone. And don't go back to church because they've eliminated Jesus Christ. And all Bibles are being burnt, you know. I mean, that's what One American News is telling people. You know, that these are the plans. This is where we're going if we continue with this. And that it's only happening because the real reality is that it's satanic. And our true president is Trump. And we're missing out a whole 100 days of our Saint Trump being in charge and keeping us out of all this trouble. None of this would have happened if the devil hadn't come into this and put us into this terrible situation. That's the kind of shit QAnon and them put out. But the reality is, this is the guy. Yeah, this is the guy. And the Pope is the Pope. Yeah, and you got to reconsider, you know, how much effect this has on society. But I'm an ecologist. Yeah, people don't expect that. Yeah, people don't expect that Jesus Christ is going to save the world through ecology, not through religion. Yeah, yeah. I have my church, but it's a church based on ecology. Yeah, the whole church is based on ecology. Yeah, and I feed the hungry because that's ecological. Yeah, raise them up, get them off the street, help them get healthy enough so they could feel like getting a job, or maybe going back home, or moving into an apartment when it becomes available. But if you've been out and you're cold and you're freezing, you're 1/10 of your body, yeah, and you're asked to move into a house, your mind can't say yes. It doesn't believe it's happening, and it'll aggravate you. No, I don't want to. First response, no, I'm not going, no. Just the emotional response in those people. And doing what I'm doing is what's healing that. And now the cities, LA, is putting a funding of millions and millions and millions of dollars to take everybody off the street within the next year. Yeah? Because the people on the street are actually getting healthier. They're getting cleaner. Their response is different. Yeah? And that's how ecology works, working in ecology. So I push people to try and get into small homes, and I push people to try and get off the grid, you know. And it's hard to get off the grid. So here's my recommendation. If you want to get off the grid, get this.
California right now, tens of thousands, if not millions of people are losing power for up to a week or 2 weeks at a time. So this is a really, really big issue. And this is one of the reasons why the Titan is so amazing, because it's not limited by its inverter or battery capacity or solar input capacity, because it can have essentially infinite amount of batteries attached to it. And because it's such a small footprint stacking vertically, it makes it really easy to have in a house, really safe. But we have to be able to recharge those batteries. So I've got 6,000 watt hours of batteries here. And if I only get 5 hours a day where I can charge with the maximum amount of solar panel capacity, and I have 500 watts in solar panels, so I take 500 watts, multiply it by 5 hours, which means I can make 2,500 watt hours in a day for those 5 hours. Now there's going to be power made outside of those ideal 5 hours, and during the summer it's going to be more, during the winter it's going to be harder because it's going to be more cloudy. So for 500 watts in panels, you really don't want more than one battery. If you go up to about 1,000 watts in solar panels, you can definitely go up to a second battery. You really want the Titan Plus 1500 or the Titan Plus 2000 and add more batteries if you need more capacity. So what we can see here is that 11% went down, and I need to charge them. I've got 500 watts in solar panels right now out in the sun, but one of the most common questions I get is what kind of cable do I get? Now this is a 12 gauge cable, and this is 8 gauge cable. Both of these are 50 feet. Now this probably weighs close to 8 to 10 pounds, and this is probably 3 to 4 pounds. Now the difference is, with other systems in the past that I've used, I've had to use 8 gauge cable because the panels are connected in a parallel fashion, meaning that the volts stay the same, but the amps go up. Now, amps are really hard to send over a long distance, so you need heavier cable because it causes less resistance. Now, resistance simply means heat. I'm going to show you an example of what can happen. This is one of my 100-foot extension cords. It was used by someone who didn't understand the necessity of having thick enough cable. And I went to go unwind this, and it's completely melted together. You can see this whole section here is actually one solid piece now. So this was coiled up, and especially being coiled up, all of that heat combined and just melted the outer shield, and it is 100% stuck right now. It's actually exposing the wire inside of here. So someone used 100 feet of this, and I think this is like a 14 gauge, which is kind of like mid-level power usage. And they were running 1,500 watts off this for a few hours. So it actually melted this, and it's now trash. That is why you have to have the proper size cable. On a system that uses parallel panels, you want 8 gauge because you're increasing the amps, not the volts. Now the Titan uses a series parallel combination. So for the 500 watts in solar panels, you just take the outer panel and you connect one of the cables. So you take the female cable and you connect it to the male cable on the next panel. And on the second panel, you take female to the male, female to male, until you go all 5 panels are connected together, and that's called series. And on the end, you'll have one connector, and on the other end, you'll have the other connector. So you'll have one male and one female, but by connecting the solar panels in series, the voltage goes up and the amps stay the same. So by having 5 solar panels, we'll only have about 5, maybe 6 amps to run through the cords, and it'll be anywhere from about 100 to 120 volts. Now these are 12 gauge and will handle the 120 volts no problem at all, but they will carry only 20 amp. If I have 1,000 watts in solar panels, I'm going to have one set of 500 here and one set of 500 here, and these 2 arrays will be connected in series. And then the positive and negatives, or the males and females, will come together into a splitter. They will then become a parallel connection at that Y branch. So you have a series parallel connection. Now since these are rated for 20 amps, these will not even get close to the maximum amount of power that's allowed to go through them. So you don't run into the heating issue. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use this adapter, and we're going to connect the panels outside into the Titan and start charging it up. I'm left with a male and female connection. You never want to have your solar panels in the sun and have a closed circuit, meaning having these two cables connected straight to each other, because that energy will get stuck in here and it'll actually burn out your solar panel. So I've got them connected in here. I'm just going to put it in. It's right here. Now we'll see, this takes a second because the MPPT charge controller is figuring out the best way to use the solar panel. And now you see after just a couple seconds, starting to figure out how to best use those solar panels. So it's showing us exactly how much power is coming in. Now it is a fall day, and notice that the screen is now flashing because it's charging and there's this plus sign. So it's getting close to about 400 watts, which is about 80 watts per panel, which is definitely really high for this time of year. There's a slight haze in the sky, and this is really important to remember that you will not normally get ideal conditions where you're making 100 watts per panel. So I'm going to go ahead and let this sit here for about an hour or so and see how much it charges up. So one of the things I love about having this stand, and I really, really highly recommend it, is that I can easily adjust the angle on this to get the most amount of power.
Yep. So that's just, if you have a house, anybody, yeah, you have a house, yeah, and you have a kitchen, and you have a bathroom, and you have a living room, and your living room has a TV, and you have a stereo, and you have, your little toothbrush and things like that, which only requires extension cords ran around. Yeah, you run an extension cord that has 2 or 3 plugs on it into your kitchen. You have the same thing in your bedroom. You have the same thing in the bathroom, same thing in the living room. 4 extension cords that then have plug-ins that go to your lamp and go to this. All ran off this one thing, and you're not buying a big system. You're not getting an inverter. You're not getting all these things that you have to plug in together and wire and all this stuff. If you buy it, this has just come out. There's about 3 of these different types, and this is the one I've chose. I have this, use this, it's really good. There's another one that's put out by Bluetti, and it's a new one that does 5,000 watts, and it does twice of what this does. It puts out a 240 volt. If you put 2 units together and connect them up, what's over here 120 and what's over here 120 turns into 240 in central plugs between the two, and out comes an enormous amount of amperage and wattage and volts. So that serves for people who have a bigger house, people who are working on a workshop, people who are running big dishwashers, people who are running big things that require 240. Even your car can be charged on this 240 quickly. So you have solar going on, it's storing it through here, and if you did solar with that, you'd be running maybe 1,200 watts. And both of these, you can put 2 solar units of 1,200 watts and plug it into 2 input ports on both units, and it charges twice as fast. They're set up that way, which is really cool, because usually you only have 1 input, and it's limited to the amount that comes in from that input. But this is 2. So these 2 particular units are super great for people who want to completely go off grid, cost you around $5,000, and you've got your house taken care of. Cool. So what about the grid for the world? What about grid for California? What about grid for Arizona? What about grid and the battery storage that goes on there? Is it really going to work out to where we're going to actually be able to store all the electricity we need for cities in the whole United States using laptop batteries, big batteries like that, round batteries, or even flat batteries like you would find in your phone and things like that? Is that really potential? Because if you put these things that are lithium close to each other, they heat up. And you have hundreds of thousands of them in these large processes that Tesla and other people are doing for countries and for states and for local communities. But is that the right way? Is those batteries the right ones? Should those be used for vehicles and transport? And the big storage systems, really big storage systems, maybe these should be a totally different battery. So in MIT, they came up with liquid metal batteries. And liquid metal batteries last infinitely. You get these other batteries, they'll give you three years, and then you have to switch them out. 3 years, because they have 6,000 cycles, and those cycles on a day-to-day basis, they're being cycled maybe 10 to 20 times, because a whole city is draining these batteries, and the solar is pumping electricity into those batteries. So they're cycling 24/7, so they only have a limit of 6,000 cycles. A really good system has 6,000 cycles. Well, if you have a small system and you're recycling not that much and you fill it up only about 2/3, then your batteries will last about 6,000 to 8,000 cycles. And that lasts about 10 years. 10 years for an average person. But not a city. It's 2 years, because they're pumping it, So that's not viable. And then the costs of those batteries are incredibly expensive when you first start out and you put them in. So here's what we got. We have liquid metal batteries, and this is what's going to be.
When we start thinking about grid level storage, if you want to pair batteries with solar or wind, which are intermittent, you need something a little more robust than the battery that was designed for your mobile phone. And so that's what I turned my attention to. And that's what gave birth to the liquid metal battery.
So when we're talking about liquid metal, I'm familiar with mercury. It's it's liquid at room temperature, but your batteries aren't made out of mercury. So how are they liquid?
So they have to run at elevated temperature. So an example is the first battery that when I say we, I mean I with my students and postdocs at MIT. The first battery we worked on was magnesium opposite antimony, and these metals melt around 630, 650 degrees Celsius. So we had to go up to about 700 degrees Celsius. And you might say, well, gee, that's very high temperature, but imagine a battery, say the size of a shipping container. It would be insulated so that it would be cool to the touch on the outside, but inside it would be operating at this elevated temperature.
And so how do these batteries work? Like, why elevate the temperature of metal and do all this work when we have, lithium-ion batteries that work at room temperature?
There's a push and a pull here. So the pull is that these batteries operating at elevated temperature can cycle with very, very high charging and discharging rates. And they can also cycle deep discharge many times, thousands of cycles, and without capacity fade. In other words, after we have data from Ambry, after 5,000 cycles, the batteries are still retaining 99+% of their original charge. So these are powerful advantages, because if you put batteries on the grid, you're not going to change them every 2-3 years the way you do with your phone or your laptop computer. You want to put them there for 20 years. And that means you have to have batteries that don't lose their capacity. So these are some of the advantages that you get from the liquid metal battery. And also the price point is very, very low. But the other thing is the disadvantages of lithium ion. Lithium ion works beautifully in the small format. But if you start putting hundreds of thousands of lithium-ion batteries in close proximity, you're going to have to be very aggressive about thermal management, because they're going to heat up. And if they heat up, they could go supercritical and burst into flame and so on. There's an optimum application for these various battery chemistries. And I think that when you go to grid-level storage, lithium ion might not be the best fit. I mean, we see some evidence of lithium ion being deployed, but I think in terms of round-trip efficiency and safety and long service lifetime, I think liquid metal battery is a better fit.
That's a
That's fact. Yep. So these things are functioning there. We already have these batteries, and they're in very large operation, and they've been functioning for like 5-10 years, so there's not a problem with them. The difficulty is transition, because everybody is being marketed, batteries, buy these batteries. Tesla believes that he could do what he's doing. Other companies believe that they can do what China could do what he's doing. All that, it all depends on what is real. What is the focus here? And this particular project was to bring about not looking at it as like if you were at MIT or another university and you're developing something, your focus is not the money, what it will cost to put this into production. Your focus is to get it into a reality and show that it works. So you're going to use all the money you can get. And you're going to use materials that make it easy. You're going to use that very expensive materials. You're going to do all these things that make it possible for it to function and function quickly. But at MIT, what he decided that he would do it at focus of what would it cost to produce it. And we have to stay with that focus from the very beginning. So we use certain metals that are extremely low cost, highly environmentally easy to come by, and just they melt very quickly, easy, stable, the whole bit. Salt is a midline point. That's the electrolysis, the electrical process in between. Everything stays as a layer. They're separated by their own nature. So you just put the salt in, it stays in the center. You put the other metal in, it stays at the top. Another metal stays at the bottom. Everything stays exactly as it should. There's no, it does not mix. So that by nature, it creates a battery. You can't get a cheaper process. The making of thousands of batteries to do the same thing one battery would do is crazy. And yet this battery costs so little money to put it into actual function, and it could do what thousands of batteries could do. So that's where we're stepping. This is a big, big, big thing. This makes it possible for us to electrify the world, to electrify countries, electrify cities, put in these monorails and put in these tubular scenarios to where we have solar along the side and these battery systems, and it's consistent. These things don't go out. They don't blow up. They don't have to be changed out every 2 years. If we did that, we'd be looking constantly. Everybody looks at this economical, the negative side of it, rather than finding the truth and doing it in the way it meant to be, and have it come out first that way, just like this MIT guy. So now we have a very inexpensive way to do it, and instead of worrying about how it's going to be cooled and everything, it's actually a melting process, and that electrical energy moves faster and easier and smoother in that process. So it's not going to go in a car, but it's something that might end up in your home. Imagine that battery in your home for your whole life. One small system of batteries that's then set up in a package where you have your inverter and everything, just like I just showed you, except that it's 50 times more powerful, 20 times easier to charge, and it could take cycles that would last longer than your lifetime. So you don't rebuy it, you don't upgrade it or anything like that. It's so much more than what you need. Those are going to be the batteries that we're going to get in the future. Right now, we have to modularly buy them, and it's so expensive, and all this goes on. But when we reach this stage, we'll be at a point to where we can economically make it viable for everybody to live in an electric society and not have it be a polluting society, where everything comes into creating electricity. It'd be so polluting. We're in a process, if we can transition into this, and this is where enlightenment comes in. This is where everybody's change of their emotions and all that comes in, because people start being overshadowed by Christ. rather than influenced by this astral plane. This whole process that comes from the ceremonial energy that's going on, holding, an enormous amount of pretty badass stuff, on our Easter and on our Christmas and our, in our Bible and in our religion, and we have no idea any of it is going on. And all of that is being moved and changed, and out of that comes new technologies like we're getting right now, so let's pray on that. Boom. Bip, bip. That's not it. That's not it. Where's the paddle that comes with this? Anybody seen it? Yeah, I'll leave it alone. Okay, we'll just do this. Okay, just relax. Just repeat after me. Lord Jesus the Christ, thank you for bringing me here. Lord Jesus the Christ, I open my heart to you today. I invite you to come inside. Come inside, Lord Jesus Christ, and save my life. Receive me today as a child of God. Forgive all my sins and write my name in the book of life. I give myself to you, my spirit, my soul, my body. Receive me, Jesus the Christ. Now, the devil, the blood of Jesus is against you. I command you now to leave me. I do not belong to you. I am God's property. Leave my life. I disassociate myself from you. I renounce every evil covenant I have entered in with you. In the name of Jesus the Christ, I have received salvation. I am a child of God. Amen. Okay, take a deep breath. Okay, just relax. Okay, you can open your eyes. All right, so those who attended the darshan, remember the darshan. Those who didn't attend it, I'll let you know that it was cool. And it covered a lot of positive things. It was mainly about the ongoing process of ascension, how consciousness is moving up, and how compassion and empathy and higher mind is moving technologies forward. If we looked back a while ago, I showed you all these things about new technologies, flying cars and cars that drove themselves and electric cars, not one, but every single manufacturer, plus add another 20 on top of that every year. There are new independent manufacturers coming out of different types. Not only cars, but electric bikes and electric motorcycles and electric semi-trucks that drive themselves, you know, and all these things is what I talked about. And these are all things that, as I've been talking about them over the last 20 years, they've been slow in coming. You know, they've been in their process, but they've been coming. And many of them, the big ones, you know, where we're talking about getting into a tube that is anti-gravity, you know, because it's magnetic and it's highly compressed and it's, you know, there's no flowing air in it whatsoever. It's just like in space, you know, 200,000 feet in space, yeah, and it's 3,000 miles an hour is a possibility of that thing. Well, you know, many people thought, well, you know, we're never going to see that between San Francisco and LA. They just won't make those decisions, you know, and what's the chance of it happening someplace else, you know, and we're the most progressive, but yet we're not doing it. But the fact is that we are. And the fact is that Las Vegas is doing it. The fact is that other states are doing it. And the fact is that India is doing it, and all the way through India. And the fact is China's doing it. In fact, many countries are doing it. You know, and that it's mainly because it is something that can happen, and it is the most inexpensive process of upgrading your transportation service. You know, it's 100,000 times cheaper than putting in an airport, building airplanes, and flying people at 350 miles an hour. And not so nice ways. No one likes going to the airport. No one likes it. No one likes being treated like shit. No one likes living in the underclass economy situation, which is 90% of the seats in there. This world that I'm speaking of is one where you're all first class. You know, you don't own your car. You know, all this transportation is top of the line. Yeah, and there you can't really get much better because it's all built for everyone. You know, there's not a first class zone on that transport. You know, every single seat is the same. You can order food, or you can bring food, and you can do whatever you want. Watch movies, whatever you want. But it all depends on you. Same thing with a car that's going to come and pick you up. You know, that process could include it stops off and picks up a meal in your 2-hour drive to wherever you're going. And you sit there, you're not driving, you're sitting in the back, leaning back, watching a movie, eating a meal, and talking with people. And that's how you're going to get around. You know, way outside, you know, what you think is what is, because we're ending this caste culture, cult reality. And we're opening up to Shambhala, the reality of Shambhala, the governing body of Shambhala, the influences of Shambhala, you know, called Shangri-Las, like peace on earth, heavenly abode, all the highest sciences that could ever be imagined, all the schools and universities and spiritualism, all combined together as a society, as a world. Yeah, and we all complement all that in its ever-growing process. Yeah, and we're further than that, and our economy becomes so high, and our ecology becomes so high that we're in paradise. It's not a utopian thing, it's reality. Yeah? Cars are going to fly themselves. And they're not going to be, oh my God, am I ever going to reach the ground? It's going to be so smooth and casual and comfortable. Yeah? Lift off quietly. Go forward. You're there in 20 minutes. You know? So easy. Yeah? Life is going to be like that. It's not a utopian thing. I'm not pressuring anybody into joining something or pay a fee to get into this world, you know. It's a world that's coming because of ascension, the process of ascension, the science of Metatron, the science of Shambhala, yeah. The realization that everybody is a bodhisattva and they're all waking up to that reality, and there's no way out of it. You can't get out of it, yeah, because we're entering into that reality. Yeah, so enjoy yourselves. You know, try and get off grid as soon as you can. You know, it will cost you around $5,000 to $10,000. Yeah, or you can have Tesla come in, and they'll do it for like $10,000. You know, that's really reasonable. $10,000. Your whole house is professionally set up. And if you can't afford that, you can buy a set system, put it out on your, on your driveway. Put your solar out there, bring it in, plug it into your nice little unit, and your whole house will never get another electric bill. And if you get an electric bill, seek that sucker out. Find out where that electricity is going and shut it off. You don't need it. You can shut your power off. You literally can just run that extension cord all over the house. Just keep moving it according to what you need. Yeah. Life is different, and you're going to benefit greatly. Yeah. And your cars are going to be electrical, and you're going to be able to charge those cars and be able to keep your house and not be forfeiting, anything. But we need to move in this direction so we can eliminate, eat right, live right. We will eliminate things that you do not know is going on, and that affects your consciousness. You're the earth caretaker, and you're not in that yet. Your consciousness isn't there yet, but it will be. And so God's going to raise you up, and all of your good karma is going to go into this action of creating ascension without there being what you can see a plan involved, other than just good times. Really good times. Yeah. All right. So enjoy yourself.